At Focus on Liberia, we discuss everything Liberia. From education to politics, arts and culture, entertainment, agriculture, history, religion, family, and technology. Focus on Liberia uncovers and showcases the best of Liberia and shows the world the truth about Liberia. We educate, elevate, and promote all things Liberia. We conduct interviews, panel discussions, debates, and more. Tune in to Focus on Liberia on Facebook and YouTube and be a part of the stories that make up the news.
This is Focus on Liberia, and I am Dennis Jah.
At Focus on Liberia, we discuss everything Liberia. From education to politics, arts and culture, entertainment, agriculture, history, religion, family, and technology. Focus on Liberia uncovers and showcases the best of Liberia and shows the world the truth about Liberia. We educate, elevate, and promote all things Liberia. We conduct interviews, panel discussions, debates, and more. Tune in to Focus on Liberia on Facebook and YouTube and be a part of the stories that make up the news.
This is Focus on Liberia, and I am Dennis Jah.
And I am Anthony C.A. A pleasant welcome to Focus on Liberia. Of course, this is our program, the Hour of Politics. We are here with another analytical edition, and the nation Liberia remains the focus of this presentation. Do us a favor by sharing the broadcast with somebody. In the political quarters of Liberia, in the political cycles of Liberia, in the political minds of Liberians, there is a debate that is going on. There are others who are alarmed by what they classify as series of violations of our laws by our current president, Joseph Yuma Boakai. So we want to know whether the president has done anything, whether the president has committed acts that warrant impeachment. There are others who are propounding that the series of violations in such a relatively short time, just within the 100 days period of President Boakai, are significant enough for impeachment to be brought against him so that he can be removed from power. Now, whether or not that serves a purpose, or I think I meant to say solves any problem, is another debate for another day. So the question is, has President Boakai committed acts that warrant impeachment? That is the question, that is the topic, and that is what I'm going to analyze for you in this presentation. And so, folks, I can't welcome you enough to this presentation. And so, it is obvious now that many are complaining already that the violations are too many, relatively in such a short period of time. And they are thinking that if only this can be allowed to go on, we might be running into trouble. the violations of laws can become a problem for the country. And so they are not happy. Some people are actually not happy. Mr. Boakai ran on this idea of being the president that would be about the rule of law. President Boakai now criticized then President Weah that Weah was a violator of the laws of Liberia, who had completely blatant disregard for the rule of law. And that the violations of our laws, including our Constitution, was commonplace in President Weah's government. The Unity Party of Joseph Boakai was also very loud, ceaseless, relentless, in pointing out that Weah was a violator of the laws. Now, if you ask me if President Weah was law violator, I would say yes. And even here, I focus on Liberia. I did a presentation titled, "Is President Weah the commander-in-chief or a violator-in-chief?" And if you have the opportunity to go to that presentation, you will see whether or not President Weah was actually a violator of our laws. In other words, that there were instances he violated our laws. Obviously, he violated our laws. And so the coming in of President Boakai now, was to correct, stop this violating of our laws, for the danger associated with violating laws have never been anything good for the country, let alone a Liberia that has a unique history where leaders abuse powers and violate laws, and all of those things pile up and accumulate into something, and then we saw violence. And so we have come to a place now to have a profound understanding of the consequences that can be for a nation when its leaders engage in violating laws. So President Boakai now, when he was then Kennedy Boakai, raised Liberians' hope. They explained to us the importance, the benefits of this rule of law. And that when given the opportunity to serve our people will experience fair and judicial dispensations of our laws, and that Liberia will be a country of law and not a country of men. During Weah's time, the narrative was that Liberia was a country of men and Liberia was no longer a country of law. And so it was necessary for Weah to be booted out of power, for he was not a man of the law, that he was not about the rule of law. And now the Unity Party has been a party of the rule of law, something I question so profoundly. But that was the lecture, that was the campaign, that was the debate, and that was the promise that this government now, Boakai, will be about the rule of law. And in relatively a short period of time, many Liberians are citing instances of flagrant and blatant and unrelenting efforts, attempts, steps on the part of the president, instances where either him directly through his handlers or indirectly through his handlers and his administration violating the laws of Liberia and thereby making Liberians to feel that this is not the change that they voted for, and this is not the rule of law that was promised to them. And so let us look at some of the instances pointed out by critics of this government that constitute the violation of laws, for which some critics of this government are not hesitating and floating the idea that enough has been done already to proceed to an impeachment proceeding. Let's look at some of those instances and now assess those instances as to whether they are significant enough to get to the impeachment proceeding they're talking about. And also whether an impeachment proceeding will call it for Liberia. Whether or not it will solve a problem for us. And whether or not it is even possible, given the composition of the legislature, that we will succeed as a nation, or our legislature will succeed in getting this president out of office constitutionally through what is described as impeachment. Let's look at some things that they are looking at. Number one, there are others who argue that the whole thing called government is on the basis of what they call social contract. And social contract will have no meaning when there is not what we call public trust. Public trust is the belief that people elected into government, people appointed into government, a party elected in government or into government, that a party that has earned the trust of the people, that has won the hope of the people, that it will come to deliver by upholding the rule of laws, by protecting the rights of people, of the citizens, by improving the human and material conditions of the people, by uplifting, maintaining, and strengthening the image of the country. That is the trust that citizens in their majority will look for to say, we believe this party, this candidate, will be able to uphold these constituting public trust. So now, the other aspect is public opinion. Why do the citizens think about the conduct of a government? But allow me to finish the thought on public trust. The question now is, has public trust been betrayed? So we're talking about betrayal of public trust. And I know it depends on who you talk to. For there are our fellow citizens, mainly supporters of the president and members of his party, who are vehement that he is the best that ever happened to Liberia, that he is better than all others, and so we are on the right path. they were justified, that public trust has not been betrayed. And in fact, we argue that public trust has been elevated. So how do we know that public trust has been betrayed? When promises made are broken, when expectations are being let down, then public trust is betrayed. Then those constitute the betrayal of public trust. So could there be instances, or are there instances where we can say, well, public trust been betrayed here and there? There are some Unity Party partisans that felt betrayed when President Boakai failed a major promise of asset declaration. The law requires that before a public official takes office, that public official must declare his assets and liabilities, or her assets and liabilities. A major promise made by President Boakai. And this is by law enacted by our legislature to be followed. It has a purpose. It has a reason. It's a mandate. It is a requirement. Before you opt to be president or any public official, you are aware of this law. Even ignorance of the law excuses no one. This law was crafted, passed into law at the time President Boakai now was vice president. Yet, having full knowledge of this law, he was in violation of the law. Now, another part of the public trust aspect is that you will be transparent, that you will be accountable. Transparency meaning you have nothing to hide. Again, this president, this party, its supporters, me and all other Liberians held the belief then against President Weah that it was unfortunate for him to have declared his assets in violation of the law. And as though that violation was not enough, he kept it as a secret. In fact, we are reason for not disclosing to Liberians at the time what his asset was that he had his children to protect. Something this Unity Party in power now criticizes. So when you criticize something, that means you disagree with it. That means you know that it is not proper. It means that you will not do any such thing because it's not proper. But here we are, today and now, this Unity Party's leader declared his asset, and up to now, we don't know where it is. He is hiding it just as we are hid his own. What is the difference? A betrayal of public trust, right there. Now, another thing is this aspect of questionable presidential interferences. President Weah was being criticized, rightfully so, and I agree 100%. There were instances where he interfered with all our governmental functions. For example, the legislature. Weah was accused of either using money, bribe envelope that the Unity Party introduced in the first place. We must state that clearly. will induce lawmakers interfering with their legislative functions. Our Constitution is clear. Our democracy is clear. The structure of our government is 3 equal but separate branches of government that coordinate without any interferences. The lawmakers debate the budget and pass it. The lawmakers debate concessions agreement and pass it. The lawmakers debate laws and pass them. There should be no interference or inducement whatsoever from the executive branch of government. The executive government responsibility is to send that request and allow the lawmakers to do the people's business without inducing them with the people's money before that work gets done. But the CDC government, like the previous Unity Party government, had engaged in these interferences, which constitute quite clearly an abuse and violation of the separation of powers. In fact, bribery is a violation of our laws. The Liberian laws are against the act of bribery. So for the executive branch of government to be bribing, that's not lobbying. Let's call it what it is. They are inducing people, giving them money to do what they're supposed to do. So let us be clear. The lawmakers were induced by the weird government. That was interferences from the executive branch of government into legislative functions. Boakai came to change that because that was interfering into another branch of government, thereby violating the separation of powers, allowing the other branches of government to operate independently. Hello? So, is Boakai guilty of this? There are instances critics are pointing out. Number one, and this is debatable though, when President Boakai's party put forth Richard Kuhn for speaker, it was alleged and reported that the president and his party sourced funding from where no one knows, and they had engaged lawmakers with money that they have given their money, and there is cogent evidence to this effect. Cogent evidence to the effect. Evidence that the president, through his agents, reached out to lawmakers and had made everything possible to give them the money so that they would do as he would like at the time. That is an interference. That is the executive branch of government that is not respecting the separation of powers and is purporting as though this is a normal legislative process that the executive branch of government can, influence things. You don't influence things with money in that manner, because doing so is bribery. You cannot. So what was the money for? Should the president of Liberia pay lawmakers undercover to do their work? The government of Liberia pay all of them for their work. So to give them extra money, what the money was intended for? What is the intention of that money? The intention of money is very clear, so that they will do what the president wants. And so if you look at the intent of giving them the money, you could talk to them. Hey, Richard Coon presents a better choice for Speaker. With Richard Coon, the executive branch of government can coordinate with the legislature and deliver for our people. You don't have to give them money. Giving them money, what is the intent of the money? That money is intended to induce, to entice the legislators. It is corruption, it is bribery, and it's a violation of our laws. That is why, even in the code of conduct, it is clear that no public officials of government should receive a gift value more than $200. The law did not say 200 United States dollars. For the fact that it's a Liberian law, I will want to presume or assume that it is talking about Liberian dollars. So for a public official to accept gift value more than $200 constitute bribery in the act of corruption that is punishable by law, and that is a violation of our laws. So for this president now to have acted like the Ellen Johnson Sirleaf government, like the president we are government, going as far as finding money to give it to lawmakers so that they will do as he wishes, is a violation of the separation of powers, is a clever attempt to commit the act of robbery, and that is tantamount to corruption, pure and simple. So that is an Eastern you might understand. Now, let's talk about another one. But if you want me to give you more instances, so during the Richard Coon voting time, money was floated from the president, allegedly, intended to induce the lawmakers to elect the Unity Party's person. Then of late, there was another outcry about funds being given to the legislature again. Yeke Koluba is on record for saying he has the evidence that he displayed, and the Unity Party has not come out to deny this. The Unity Party has not come out to deny this. Neither has the government of President Boakai come out to say this is not true. There are checks evident to this effect. Now, another one. Where before President Weah could be inaugurated as President of the Republic of Liberia, while he was President-elect, he had what they call the office of the President-elect. At the time, the current Minister of Presidential Affairs, Mr. Sylvester Grisby, was within that office of President-elect Joseph Boakai. While serving as President-elect, while President Boakai had not been sworn into office to become Commander-in-Chief and the Chief Executive of the Republic of Liberia, making him to be an unconstitutional president, and thereby not having the right and privileges to communicate as a president, to make requests as president, and that every other request he needed to make that will be governmental in nature needed to go through the office of the president in power at the time. This then president-elect, now President Boakai's office, through now Presidential Affairs Minister Sylvester Grisby, wrote a letter to a governmental agency, NASCA, National Social Security and Welfare Corporation, The communication is in our possession. It's all over the place. Sylvester Grisby requested that that agency should provide vehicles for the use of the president-elect and his team. The National Social Security and Welfare Corporation, if I didn't call it right, I'm calling it right now, correctly now. The National Social Security and Welfare Corporation honored or had honored the request of then the office of the president-elect, Joseph Yeman Boakai, and provided those vehicles reportedly. It was unconstitutional. It was wrong for the president-elect at the time to be making requests to government agency. That was wrong. Others are saying this is an instance that does not speak well for this president. It's a betrayal of trust, they argue. It's a letdown. It does not show the experience that he campaigned on. And it is completely against the rule of law. Now, another one is what we call the PFM law, the Public Financial Management Laws of Liberia. I will only make reference to just one. And I will make this reference in concert or in connection with what we also call PPCC law of Liberia. PPCC is a public procurement. So there is an institution that is responsible for public procurement and concessions, I believe. That law says, and it's clear, that when a government agency is awarding contracts, there should be a bidding process. On the other hand, the PFL law is clear that any money, any loan that the government of Liberia uses must be approved by the legislature. The Boakai administration awarded contracts in the tune of 21 million United States dollars. There was not a bidding process in violation of the PPCC law. The government had gone on to award these contracts to contractors. So this was the government of Liberia basically spending $21 million that was not approved by the legislature. Violation of the PFM law, not awarding these contracts through a competitive bidding process, constitute a violation of the act creating the PPCC. So the critics of the government are very clear here and saying, look, Mr. President, these are the very things you accuse President Weah of doing, for which you were very eloquent and right to have said Weah was not governing according to the rule of law, and that the rules of law or the rule of law was being butchered on the table in broad day. And here you are repeating these very tactics or violations committed by the we are government, for which President we are was criticized, rightfully so, as a violator of our laws. So to nail it quite clearly, this government violated the public procurement laws of Liberia by awarding $21 million road construction contracts to companies without any competitive bidding process. To give you the details, the Minister of Public Works sent a request to the PPCC, and that was okay. That is not how it is done. These contracts must be announced. Companies must bid. They should be evaluated. The one who put forth the most reasonable contracts, all right, should be awarded based on government discretion. And there are guidelines and requirements that any such company must meet to be awarded. And those companies must be evaluated to have the history, the financial potential, and they know how to get the job done. You don't just award contracts to anybody. And those companies must be registered with the Liberian government. All of these variables must be verified before awarding the contract, in keeping with the laws creating the PPCC and also respecting the public financial management laws of Liberia. That the government of Liberia cannot spend cannot spend a penny that is not approved or not to the knowledge of the legislature. So that constitutes a violation clearly, no question whatsoever. Now, then there is another thing called tenure, which remains another debatable topic. And that would be the final point of this presentation. What is tenure position? Article 56 of the Liberian Constitution allots the power to the president to appoint all officials of government. All officials of government. The Liberian Constitution gives that power to the president. And the Constitution is clear that this power of the president to appoint all government officials must not be restricted. Clear and simple. Remember, we have two equal branches of government. They are equal in powers, and they coordinate, and they must respect each other. And they all have their defined roles that must be respected. One, the executive branch of government enforces the laws of Liberia. The legislative branch of government make laws. So whatever laws the legislative branch of government makes must be respected. Just as when the president enforces the law legally and through what we call due process, according to the rule of law, that must also be respected. And there are checks and balances. So then we have the judicial branch of government that interprets the law, that tells you the intent of the law, that tells you whether or not the laws are violated or not. And the judicial branch of government is the final arbiter of justice, meaning when the judicial branch of government says this is what the law is saying, we should all abide and respect the opinion, the ruling, the judgment of the judicial branch of government. Why? Because that is the separation of powers. That is the doctrine of the separation of powers. Now, another thing is that because we are in a democracy, when the Supreme Court rules and one is not certified, or when one of the lower courts rule and one is not certified, you can appeal. If there is a law that is interpreted that you are not satisfied with, as the executive branch of government, there is always a better way, which is a legal process. You can submit a bill to amend the law when you do not agree with the interpretation of the law. When you think the interpretation of the law, the intent of the law is counterproductive to our democracy, our governing process, our rule of law, and the stability of the nation, you can so do. That is why people amend laws, to conform to realities that will make things better for the nation. Why am I talking about? Just as the president has the right to appoint, the lawmakers have the right to make laws. Just as the president appointments must be respected, the laws made by the judiciary, the legislative branch of government, must be respected. And just as the enforcement or the application of the laws by the president must be respected, and the making of laws by the legislative branch of government must be respected, the interpretation of the judiciary branch of government must also be respected, so that we can coexist. That is how this institution of our government coexist. For they are equal in powers, except their specific roles are defined for the peaceful coexistence and functioning of our society and our government. That is the wisdom of the structure of our government. And the president took up to uphold the laws of Liberia. Hello? So the legislature now made a law, and the law says that in the Constitution, to put it right, the Constitution says the legislature shall make laws. The legislature shall create other agencies of government and make laws for the effective running of those agencies or commissions. Boakai has the right to appoint all other tenure positions in as much as is within the ambience of the law. He has that power. The tenure position law did not take away the president's power to appoint, or the executive right and power to appoint, except in the wisdom of the legislature. They say for positions that are tenure, because of the sensitive nature of these positions or these institutions, individuals that will be appointed there will be tenure, meaning they will have to be there for a specific period of time. And you can only remove them while they serve that time guaranteed by law for cause. The same as the president. The president of Liberia is elected for 6-year term, and it is guaranteed that that president will serve that 6-year term, and that president can only be impeached, in other words, removed, for a cause. And those are defined in the Constitution. Equally so, turning positions are designed by law to go for either 6 years, 4 years, 5 years, 7 years, depend on what the law says. And those positions, or the individuals occupying those positions, are guaranteed those that time period to serve, just as the president is guaranteed the 6 years, just as members of representatives are guaranteed a 6-year term. Just as senior senators are guaranteed 9-year terms and junior senators 6-year terms. Just as people who are appointed on the Supreme Court bench are guaranteed technically lifetime, except where they are incapacitated or sick, or they voluntarily decide to resign when one of them reaches the required retirement age. Other than that, that time period is guaranteed. That's our laws. The tenure positions did not take away the president's power to appoint. All people who are turning today were appointed by a president or the executive branch of government. And they can only be removed for cause, just as a president can be removed for cause. For a president to remove anyone on tenure position without a cause is a violation of the tenure position law. It's an abuse of power. That's one aspect. Now, the matter has gone to court. The Supreme Court has ruled or given an opinion in which it stated that tenure positions are legal and constitutional. So, Mr. President, for you to have removed those people, you are in violation. Those people should be reinstated. The Supreme Court judgment must be respected. Instead, Mr. Rule of President, now President Boakai, the very people he appointed that the Supreme Court deemed unconstitutional for the manner and procedural errors, and also for the fact that the tenure positions were still pending, that the attorney had not expired, so he could not have done that. He went and welcomed the ruling of the Supreme Court in a very public manner, just for him to suspend those individuals in violation and disrespect to the judgment of the Supreme Court, and in further disrespect to the Supreme Court, replacing those individuals with the very people the Supreme Court ruled that he should recall. Can you imagine that? He is disrespecting the court. There's some other people say constitute a contempt. So, critics of the president are saying these violations are unwarranted. These violations are unacceptable. They are blatant. And the president should be called to a check. And that when he's not brought to book, he will continue to exercise unrestrained powers, which is not good for our democracy. And that this country is a country of laws and not a country of men. So whether or not you agree with those who are saying these violations are way too many in this relatively short time, and these are serious violations, and that they warrant an impeachment proceeding, remains a question of debate. And for anyone to decide. Our role as a media institution is to share with you the instances people are citing, the violations allegedly they are pointing to, providing an analysis and providing understanding and clarity on these issues, and see whether or not those who are pointing out these violations are right, and that these violations justify the need for the impeachment proceeding, is your judgment and your conclusion to make. Our role is to explain, to inform, and to educate. And we have done our part. And so this is how we will come to this yet another analytical edition of the Hour of Politics here at Focus on Liberia, where we educate, we elevate, and promote all things our dear country, Liberia. So until we see you again, the subject for today's discussion has President Boakai committed acts that warrant impeachment? Whether or not you found that answer in the presentation is yours to make. And whether or not it's even timely, and whether or not this will serve or solve any problem is your judgment. But if you want me to give you a little bit of history of impeachment and whether or not that can impact, a country, I will say to you, no. It has no negative impact in my judgment. Presidents in the past have been impeached and replaced or succeeded. And the countries went on. So this is not a death sentence. This is not a doom situation. And whether or not this current legislature, based on its composition, has the capacity, the fortitude, the temerity, the wherewithal, and the balls to even initiate a proceeding that will lead to impeaching this president is another thing that we are yet to see. Now, if your interest is for me to provide you an analysis, given the composition, I will have to do it another time. So let's see whether this emerging appetite to hold the president accountable at the level of the legislature through an impeachment proceeding, let's wait and see where that goes. And when it comes to that, we'll be more than glad to do a presentation and provide some analysis whether it is doable, whether this legislature, based on its composition, will even succeed in getting the numbers that will make it happen, or getting a vote that will make it happen. So until then, my name is Anthony C., the host of the Hour of Politics here at Focus on Liberia. We will close with our song that says, "We are all Liberians." And until we see you again, when we do, enjoy that song. Please don't hesitate to share our broadcast with somebody. And never hesitate to elect to receive notifications when we are live. We are also on your YouTube. We will encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you. Enjoy the song, and bye-bye.
We are Liberia. Liberia is our home. Liberia people. Liberia.